From the studios, it's Election Yard. Now, recently we laid out our initial ratings for the 2026 U.S. Senate races. Today, we're going to lay out our ratings for 36 governor's races as of the middle of March 2026. These are our initial ratings of the year. Of course, these are subject to change throughout the campaign, and you're just going to have to stick around at Election Yard to find out what we do with these rankings. So what you see today are our initial rankings, subject to change, for all 36 gubernatorial elections in the United States this year. So what we're going to do, just like in the other video, we're going to run through the states in alphabetical order, give our rating. So you can be a toss-up, or you can be tilt, lean, likely, or safe for one party or another. So we start, as always, in Alabama, the first state, alphabetically. So Kay Ivey, the incumbent, she is not eligible to run for re-election. This is an open seat. It's safe Republican. The Senator Tommy Tuberville is running for this seat. He is being opposed here by Doug Jones, the Democrat, the former U.S. Senator who had won a special election. Tuberville actually unseated him in 2020. So now the two will face off again, but Alabama's Alabama. You would think the Republicans will win this, but Doug Jones obviously is the only Democrat in recent years that's done anything on a statewide level in Alabama. So I'm sure the Democrats are happy to have him. They'd much rather have him than not have him. But I still think Tuberville starts this race in a very commanding position. So Alaska here, Mike Dunleavy, the incumbent governor, can't run for re-election. We start this one at likely Republican. So the Republicans have a candidate like Nancy Dahlstrom. She is the lieutenant governor. The Democrats going to most likely run Tom Begich, although they have other options there as well. Mary Peltola took a pass on this race. She decided to run for Senate. So Alaska is a quote-unquote red state. Just remember, we have said it on this channel a number of times. Alaska is very similar politically to, let's say, Maine, except it's definitely a redder version of Maine. But what I mean by that is Maine and Alaska are both politically more independent. They're going to do whatever they're going to do. Partisan affiliation in a place like Alaska doesn't quite mean as much, because you look at their legislature, they've got cross-party coalitions and alliances. So things are weird in politics up there. But at the end of the day, it's still a pretty red state at the statewide level. So you would think that the Republicans start in a good position here. So Katie Hobbs in Arizona running for re-election. She starts as tilt Democratic. So this is the first election in which Arizona is going to have a lieutenant governor. So in the past, and we have seen this with the line of succession in Arizona a few times, if the governor resigns, leaves office for whatever reason, the Secretary of State would become governor because Arizona didn't have a lieutenant governor. Well, after this election, they will have a lieutenant governor. So Katie Hobbs will have a running mate in this election. She obviously has the Democratic nomination sewn up. So David Schweikert, Andy Biggs, there are a couple of congressmen that are running for the Republicans, both pretty conservative. So Arizona is not a blue state per se. Arizona obviously does elect Democrats to office. They have a Democratic governor. They have 2 Democratic senators. Arizona is definitely bluer than it used to be. I wouldn't say it's blue, but it's bluer than it used to be. The thing is, what's been happening in recent elections in Arizona? The Republicans have been nominating people for certain offices like Carrie Lake in 2022 and Blake Masters. They've been nominating people for office that are turning off the electorate. In elections that, well, at least in Carrie Lake's position, 4 years ago, she thought she was going to win. So I do think Hobbs starts from a position of power. I think Biggs might come out of that nomination. I have seen some polling that suggests that, but I mean, who the hell knows? We'll just have to see on this one, but I do think that Hobbs should be favored, at least to start this race. So, Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is running for re-election. The Republican, this is safe Republican. Her opponent will be the Democrat Frederick Love. Arkansas is a red state now. Didn't used to be. At some point in my lifetime, it didn't used to be, but it is now. And I just can't really see any world in which Sarah Huckabee Sanders loses this election. Now, California is interesting. You might say, well, it's safe Democratic. How could it possibly be interesting? Okay, so let's set the stage here. The incumbent, Gavin Newsom, he can't run for re-election. He's probably going to run for president in 2028. I think you can, put your last buck on that. Here's the thing. California, they have their primaries in what's called a jungle primary or an open primary. They don't have a Democratic nomination or a Republican nomination or a marijuana party nomination. They don't have any of that. All candidates run together in the primary and the top two move to the general election. So here's what's happening. There are two main Republican candidates, but there are a lot of Democratic candidates. So current opinion polling would suggest that one of the Republicans will get into that runoff, but there's a real battle for that second spot because the Democratic vote is splitting so many ways right now. So among the Democrats, you've got, off the top of my head, Eric Swalwell. He's a congressman, but there are a number of other Democrats in the race. We have this safe Democratic on the principle that if a Democrat gets into that general election, they're going to win. That's it. The only chance the Republicans have of winning this election is for the Democrats to get shut out in the primary. Which, there are definitely some people out there right now that are freaking out about that because opinion polls suggest that no candidate's getting more than 18% of the vote, but they're all kind of neck and neck with each other. At the end of the day, I don't think the Democrats are going to let that happen. They still have a couple of months as of the time we recorded this. I think they're going to figure it out. I think enough of the Democratic vote is going to coalesce around one candidate to push them into that general election. You're probably not going to have a situation where both candidates are Democrats in that general election, but if I were the Democrats, I still wouldn't be panicked about the Republicans getting both slots, because if that happens, that would be a completely avoidable disaster on their part. So I will say that this is safe Democratic with the understanding that this would mean the Democrats got a candidate into that general election. If they don't, obviously they're going to lose. But I still think that will happen, and when that happens, the Democrat will win. The Republicans are not going to flip California unless the Democrats score an own goal here and lock their candidates out of the general election. But I don't think that's going to happen. So Colorado, Jared Polis, he is the governor. He can't run for re-election, and we're starting this race at likely Democratic. So Michael Bennet, the senator, he is running for this seat. I would imagine as of today that he will ultimately be the guy who wins this race. In November, the Republicans have people like Barbara Kirkmeyer, she's a state senator, Scott Bottoms, he's a state representative. So they do have a few people in this race, but Colorado has definitely become more of a blue state. It's not the bluest state in the country. It's not Massachusetts, but it's definitely gotten blue to the point where we don't really question the Democrats winning races like this anymore in Colorado. They might not win them with, say, 70% of the vote, but they seem to be doing pretty well for themselves. Michael Bennet is a top-tier candidate for the Democrats here, so I do think that he is a significant favorite. Maybe not safe yet, but a significant favorite. We move now to Connecticut, the nutmeg state. Ned Lamont, the Democrat, running for a third term. So we have this starting as likely Democratic. Now, you might be thinking that this one should probably be safe Democratic, but I'll tell you why it's likely. So first, a governor running for a third term, that's usually a tricky proposition. Connecticut has had three-term governors before. But once you go for that third bite of the apple, you are kind of asking the voters to extend you a little bit of credit. So you never want to assume that it's a done deal for something like that. And also, the Republicans probably, I would think, going to nominate Erin Stewart. She was the former mayor of New Britain. She was mayor of New Britain for quite a while. And she, as a Republican mayor of a blue city, she had a good reputation down in New Britain. And I actually think she's going to be a pretty good candidate. I don't necessarily think she's going to win, but I think she could be a respectably good candidate for the Republicans. So we're not starting this at safe. We are starting this at likely Democratic. Florida, Ron DeSantis cannot run for re-election. We start this race at likely Republican. So among the Republicans in the race, Byron Donalds, he is a congressman. Democrats might go with David Jolly. He's a former congressman. He used to be a Republican. He switched to the Democrats, and he's going to run as a Democrat. The Democratic Party in Florida, I'm not even sure it exists at this point. I know there are Democrats that live there. I know there are Democrats that run for office there. But for a variety of reasons, the Democratic Party of Florida just doesn't seem to do much of anything anymore. So it doesn't really seem to matter how off the wall a Republican candidate might be, just theoretically. It seems like the Republicans would win either way. So Florida just continues its trend towards being a red state, and I would need to see a lot more evidence to suggest that this is in play. As of right now, I just don't see it. So I think we're making the right call here, starting this at likely Republican. In Georgia, incumbent Governor Brian Kemp cannot run for re-election, and we start this race at lean Republican. So Burt Jones, the lieutenant governor, he's running. Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, he is running. A few other Republicans are in the running as well. Raffensperger, of course, the Secretary of State during the 2020 election. He's the guy that Donald Trump called up and said, find me 11,000 more votes. So as far as the Democrats, probably the main candidate over there, you've got Keisha Lance Bottoms. She was the mayor of Atlanta. Jeff Duncan, he was the Republican lieutenant governor. He's another one of the candidates. On that side, Stacey Abrams is not running for a third time, so the torch is going to get passed here on the Democratic side. Georgia is another state kind of like Arizona. It's bluer than it used to be. It's not blue. So the Democrats have had their successes in Georgia. It's just the governor's race, that's a tall order. So we'll obviously have to see how the primaries shake out, but I think starting this at lean Republican, not really a firm victory at this point for them. That is the way to go. So the next couple races, we won't have much to say about them. In Hawaii, safe Democratic, this is incumbent Governor Josh Green running for re-election. Linda Lingle ain't walking through that door, so Green will get reelected, I think, without much of a problem, as will Brad Little in Idaho, the Republican governor. He is, it looks like, running for a third term. He hasn't said he's not, so it looks like he's running for a third term right now. I think you have better odds of getting hit by a meteorite walking down the street than the Democrats do of winning a statewide election in Idaho. So I think you can put that one to rest. We move now to Illinois, and this is another governor that's running for a third term. There are a couple of them that we've come across even already just at Illinois. And this is J.B. Pritzker, the Democrat, running for a third term. We start him out at likely Democrat. He is rumored to be a presidential candidate in 2028. He's got to get through this gubernatorial race first. Democrats in Illinois have a pretty strong hold on the state at this point. Republicans, as I said in the Senate videos, we're talking about Dick Durbin's seat being open. Republicans have won races in Illinois in the last 15, 20 years. They have. They just have won a lot fewer than the Democrats have won. So I just really don't see, there's people like Darren Bailey who ran before. I just really don't see any of these Republicans catching up to Pritzker, especially when Pritzker in recent months has really been trying to raise his national profile. I just really don't see it at this point. I don't have it as safe yet, but I think it's going to be a real challenge for any of these Republicans to beat Pritzker. And we have made it to our first gubernatorial toss-up, and it's Iowa. Now, given that Iowa's been trending redder, I'm sure a few of you might be wondering how this could be a toss-up. Well, the incumbent governor, Kim Reynolds, she is not running for re-election. Among the Republicans in the running is Congressman Randy Feenstra. The Democrats look like they're going to be running the state auditor, Rob Sand. Opinion polling suggests that this race could be close. We did talk in the last video, in the Senate video, about certain things happening in Iowa at the local level, seeing some hefty swings to the Democrats in certain places, which we can't, to be fair, extrapolate to the statewide level yet. But you take that, you take the mood over tariffs in the country, agricultural policy, you take the candidates themselves and the fact that this is an open seat race and the opinion polling that suggests that this could be a close race. You put all those things together and I think you got yourself a toss-up. So that is where we are starting Iowa. If the Democrats were to win this race, I think that would be a huge get for them because I feel like there might have been the kind of sense in recent years that Iowa's gotten away from them. So the Democrats actually, I think, have an opportunity to make some inroads back into Iowa, and we're starting this one at the toss-up, so you never know, could happen. So we move on to Kansas. Incumbent Democrat Laura Kelly is term limited out, and we have this as a lean Republican gain. Ethan Corson, he is one of the Democrats in the running. The Republicans have quite a thick field here. Among the names, Jeff Collier, former governor, Vicky Schmidt. They've got a nice stack of candidates there, and I think whomever wins that Republican nomination is going to be favored. A couple of things had to happen back in 2018 for the Democrats to pick this seat up. Laura Kelly ran a good campaign and was seen as a much better alternative to whom she was running against 8 years ago. She ended up obviously getting reelected in 2022. She can't stay in office. So you would think that Kansas is going to revert back to its red ways. Long way to go in this one, but I think that's the way it is trending. So in Maine, Janet Mills, open seat. She can't run for reelection. She is running for Senate. And we have her seat starting at lean Democratic. So among the candidates here on the Democratic side, you got Angus King III, Senator Angus King's son, running for the Democrats. Shenna Bellows, she's the Secretary of State. The Republicans don't have as good of a bench here. The most successful Republican, other than Susan Collins in the state in recent years, was Paul LePage. He is not running for governor again. He did run 4 years ago against Janet Mills and lost. One of the Republican candidates is Jonathan Bush, and yes, he is related to the Bush family. Another thing to note here is that Maine does often have independents that run for governor. They had an independent governor. They have an independent senator. It's the same guy, Angus King. So independents actually get votes in Maine too. Like we said about Alaska, Maine is just going to do whatever the hell it wants to do. So I would think the Democrats have the better pool of candidates to draw from. I would think the Democrats probably will be favored. You would think it's going to be a Democratic year. That's the way it's starting to shape up right now. So you wouldn't think the GOP is going to flip it, but we've just got it at lean for now because you don't know. The independents could skew some votes. They could take some votes from certain candidates and make things interesting. So we got to put a pin in it, but let's call it lean Democrat for now. We move now to Maryland, and this is safe Democrat Wes Moore running for a second term. He will win it. I think this race will be eminently boring. I don't think anyone is going to touch him in this race. And I think the same goes in Massachusetts. Up in the Commonwealth, the incumbent governor, Maura Healey, the Democrat, she is running for a second term. She will win it. Charlie Baker is no longer on scene. The Republican governor they had. Massachusetts does elect Republican governors. They just don't throw Democratic governors out to elect them. And when they do elect Republican governors, they're definitely much more moderate, like a Charlie Baker or like a Bill Weld. So, yeah, Maura Healey is fine. And now we come upon our second gubernatorial toss-up. This is Michigan. So incumbent Gretchen Whitmer cannot run for re-election. So this is a 3-candidate race. This is a 3-party race. So among the Democrats, you've got Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. Among the Republicans, you've got Congressman John James. And you have an independent, the mayor of Detroit, a former Democrat, Mike Duggan. He is running for governor. So you got a three-way race here. And to be completely honest with you, I've looked at the polls, I've looked at some of the analysis, and for it being March right now, at the time we recorded this, I got absolutely no idea who's going to win this race. So we need to let this marinate for a little bit. We need to let it sit. We need to see how the primaries go. And then we'll come back to it, check the poll numbers, check the pulse on Michigan, and see what's happening. I think the big question here is how much vote Mike Duggan is going to take. Some polling has suggested that he's going to get well into the double digits. I don't know if he's going to win, but he could definitely make both the Republican and the Democratic nominees miserable. So very interesting situation here where you actually have a credible three-way race in Michigan. You don't see that in states outside of, I don't know, Maine. So very, very interesting. Although, Minnesota, Jesse Ventura, we saw that, but it doesn't happen very often outside of states like that. So really interesting to see it happen here. Now in Minnesota, incumbent Tim Walz, he was going to run for a third term. He decided not to run for a third term. So his seat, we're going to start it out at likely Democratic. The Democrats got their big get here, and that is Amy Klobuchar, the U.S. Senator who was first elected to the Senate back in 2006, so 20 years ago. She was just reelected to a fourth term in the Senate. She is going to run for governor. So, Amy Klobuchar is going to win. You look at the Republican field, like among them, Mike Lindell, the MyPillow guy. Amy Klobuchar is arguably the most popular politician in Minnesota right now. I just don't think she's going to lose. She wins all of her elections in routes. I'm not sure that this will be an exception, but you know what? I think she's in a really good spot. I just struggle to see any of these people beating somebody like Amy Klobuchar. They would have had a much better chance against Tim Walz because you got Walz running. He would have been running for a third term. Maybe his popularity is not where it should be. Walz would have been a much more beatable candidate, whereas I think Klobuchar, I think, is going to ultimately mop the floor with whomever she runs against. But to be fair, we will start this at likely. We could move it to safe. In Nebraska, Jim Pillen, the Republican running for re-election, we have this as safe Republican. This isn't the statewide race that I think people are going to be watching in Nebraska. People are going to want to see if the independent Dan Osborne can make a dent against Pete Ricketts in the Senate race. The Democrats will probably nominate Lynn Walz as their candidate. Nebraska is a pretty red state by and large, so I don't think that this is going to be much of a contest. So in Nevada, you've got incumbent Governor Joe Lombardo, a Republican. He unseated the Democrat Steve Sisolak in 2022. He is running for a second term. He's going to have to face off against the state's Attorney General, Aaron Ford, most likely. There are other Democrats in the race. Ford is probably the one to beat. In the Democratic primary, expect it to be a close race. Elections like this in Nevada do tend to be close, and Ford is a good candidate for them, being the state's Attorney General. Lombardo, I think, tilt Republican is where we're going to start this. I wouldn't necessarily call this a toss-up yet, but I need to see some more poll numbers, and if it looks sufficiently close, we may ultimately move this one to toss-up at some point over the spring or even in the summer, but let's just give Lombardo the tiniest edge right now and then see what happens. So, New Hampshire, Kelly Ayotte, the incumbent governor, she's running for re-election. We're going to start this at lean Republican, although I think there is a chance that we actually might move this to likely at some point. We need to see a little more polling data, get a little bit more of a feel for what's going on in New Hampshire. So the Democrats may run Cindy Warmington. She was an executive counselor in New Hampshire. She did run for the nomination against Joyce Craig in 2024. She lost. It might be her nomination this time. Once incumbents get in New Hampshire, it's hard to get them out. There was a one-term Republican governor named Craig Benson who did get knocked out back in the 2000s, the early 2000s. But it's pretty rare for incumbents in New Hampshire to lose. Now, of course, New Hampshire has 2-year gubernatorial terms, so you would think Ayotte's going to get another shot here. We're going to start it at lean Republican because New Hampshire is not certainly very much of a red state because it's not a red state. It's bluer than it isn't. But Ayotte had elected office before. I do think she's the favorite here, but it bears watching, though I think she may end up growing her advantage here. We move now to New Mexico. Michelle Lujan Grisham, the incumbent, can't run for a third term. We're going to start this at likely Democratic. So off the top of my head, a primo Democratic candidate here is Deb Haaland. She's a former congresswoman. She was the Secretary of the Interior. Democrats have some pretty interesting candidates in the race. The Republicans don't really have a very deep bench in New Mexico. Haven't since, Gary Johnson, Pete Domenici were around. They're not anymore. Susana Martinez is really the only other name that you can think of. She was already a 2-term governor. She's not running again. So New Mexico being a moderately blue state, let's call it. Let's say that the Democrats will win whomever they nominate, but don't necessarily expect it to be a blowout. And now we move to New York. Kathy Hochul is running for another term. We're going to start this at likely Democratic, not safe. Hochul started getting a little more national publicity. She started going after Donald Trump more. She ended up trading endorsements with Zoran Mamdani, the mayor of New York City, while he was running for election, and now Mamdani is endorsing Hochul. At one point, it looked like, well, this might be interesting because Hochul's certainly not the most popular governor New York has ever had, so maybe somebody could primary her successfully. It looks like that threat is being put out. And then you move to the Republican side. Elise Stefanik was going to run for governor. She ended up dropping out. Bruce Blakeman, he is the county executive out in Nassau County on the island. He's going to run. So now New York. Keep in mind here, the last time the Republicans flipped the governorship of New York was 1994. So you had George Pataki running against Mario Cuomo, not Andrew Cuomo, Mario Cuomo, his father. Cuomo had already been in office for a while. I believe he was running for a 4th term in 1994. Pataki beat him in what was an historically good Republican wave election year, the Republican Revolution in 1994. Pataki proved to be actually a pretty popular governor, and he himself served 3 terms, and the Republicans haven't won jack shit in New York since. I don't see it. Especially with this looking like it's going to be a Democratic year. I just don't see it. But Hochul, like I said, she's not the most popular governor New York has had. But it's just really hard to see the Republicans finding a winning message in 2026, especially in a place like New York. So now we move to Ohio. This one I find very interesting. So we were going to say that this one was lean Republican right before we went on. We changed it to tilt Republican. Mike DeWine, the incumbent governor, is term limited out. The Democrats have not won a gubernatorial race in Ohio in a long time. I believe it's been 20 years now. This actually might be a shot for them. Now, Ohio, you have seen get redder over the last decade. That's undeniable. But opinion polling actually suggests that Amy Acton, the Democrat here, has a shot in this race. So if you ask me who she's going to be running against, it's most likely going to be a former presidential candidate, former Doge guy, Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek's poll numbers aren't that great for Ohio. Now, we still have this as tilt Republican because Ohio has gotten redder, and you would think that at the end of the day, the Republican voters are going to come out and put him over the top. With that said, right now, the numbers aren't great. And just like you have in the Senate race, you've got Sherrod Brown running a competitive race, which you would expect, against the senator there, John Huston. Now, I'm not saying Ohio's going to flip. Ohio's going to become a swing state again. Ohio's going to get back to where it used to be. I'm not saying any of that. But I do think this race bears watching because right now this does not look like a runaway for the Republicans with an open seat here. We move now to Oklahoma. This is an open seat. Kevin Stitt, the incumbent Republican governor, he cannot run for re-election. This is a safe Republican seat. I don't know who the Republicans are going to nominate out of their wide field. Frankly, nor does it matter because whomever it is going to win. And now we move to Oregon. So Tina Kotek is the governor here. We're starting this one at lean Democratic, and here's why. So Oregon, blue state, right, tends to vote for Democrats. Republicans haven't won the governor's race here in God knows how long. Literally decades. However, Kotek, not really the most popular governor. She only got in with like 47% of the vote 4 years ago. She's somewhat vulnerable, but it is Oregon. So I think lean is the place to start with this one. We will have to see how things go. There was some thinking 4 years ago that Kotek wasn't going to win. But, Oregon's Oregon. Even in kind of a red year, she found a way to win. And I think that will happen again here. And now on to Pennsylvania. Josh Shapiro, the Democrat, possible presidential candidate in 2028. He's running for a second term. We're starting this one at likely Democratic. Now, other outfits like Cook Political Report, they moved this on their board to safe Democratic. So the state treasurer, the Republican Stacey Garrity, is running. So here's the thing. Shapiro has a high approval rating. Shapiro won his first race in a rout. One thing that Stacey Garrity has on Doug Mastriano, the candidate in 2022, is that she has won a statewide election. Other than that, I'm struggling to make the distinction. I'm not confident yet that this campaign is going to go like that one did. But I think Shapiro, now as an incumbent, goes into this race even stronger than he was 4 years ago. So I think this is going to be a tough one for the Republicans, even though they have been hoping that they could pull Pennsylvania in a redder direction. I just really don't know that they're going to beat Shapiro this time. It seems unlikely, which is why we're starting this at likely Democratic. So we move on now to Rhode Island. Dan McKee is the incumbent governor. He took over for Gina Raimondo when she joined Joe Biden's cabinet. So he can run constitutionally for one more term. In Rhode Island, he is doing it. He will win if he gets through his primary. The Republicans, we said this in the Senate video, we're going to say it again here. They don't have a bench in Rhode Island. They really don't have anyone. They have elected Republican governors in Rhode Island. I can name two of them, Don Carcieri and Lincoln Allman. I don't see either one of them here. So I would imagine that if McKee gets through his primary, he'll win. The Republicans really don't have anybody of note to run in this election. They do have a primary, but nobody of note. And now we move to South Carolina. Henry McMaster, the Republican incumbent governor, can't run for re-election. So the Republicans have a couple of candidates here, like Nancy Mace, the congresswoman. She is running for governor. Ralph Norman, congressman, is running for governor. They got a few other names in the race. The Democrats do have some names like Jermaine Johnson. He's a state representative. But the Republican race is going to be the real draw here. And whomever wins that nomination is going to definitely be heavily favored in the general election. It's been a long time since South Carolina has elected a Democrat to the governorship, almost 30 years now. And I don't see that changing now. So South Dakota, this is not an open seat, but it's an interesting race. We'll call this safe Republican, but the incumbent governor here, Larry Rhode, he took over for Kristi Noem when she went to Trump's cabinet for all the good that did her. Now she's out. So Rhode is facing a primary. So Dusty Johnson, congressman, he's one of the people who's running against Rhode in the primary. It's actually kind of a crowded Republican field. The incumbent governor has absolutely no guarantee of getting the nomination. So that's really the only intrigue here. The winner of the Republican nomination is going to win the election. But who will it be? Because it might not be the governor. Moving now to Tennessee, Bill Lee, the incumbent Republican, not the guy who used to play for the Red Sox. He cannot run for re-election. This is safe Republican. So the Republicans most likely going to go with their Senator Marsha Blackburn here. There are other candidates in the race. There were obviously Democrats in the race, like Jerry Green. She's a city councilor in Memphis. The Democrats are not particularly successful at a statewide level in Tennessee at this point. So you would think that Blackburn, especially with her profile, that she's going to be starting in a good position. Now, Texas, the governor's race here, Greg Abbott is going to run for a 4th term as governor. He is going to face the Democrat Gina Hinojosa, who just won her primary earlier in March. We're starting this at likely Republican. I almost put this at lean, but we're going to start it at likely. I think if any race is going to flip in Texas, it's going to probably be the Senate race. You have an established Republican governor here. You would think that he's going to be the favorite. I do think he's the favorite at this point. I'm not writing Hinojosa off yet. I need to see more. But we're starting this one at likely, but I'm not necessarily sure we're going to keep it here. So Vermont, this is safe Republican. No, this is not a typo. And Vermont has a Republican governor named Phil Scott. So he is running for re-election as far as any of us know. The only thing that you need to take away from this is that the microsecond that Phil Scott announces he is not running for re-election, this is going to flip to safe Democrat. It's going to go the other direction. He's running, so he's going to win. He is a very, very popular liberal Republican governor. He will be the governor as long as he wants to be, but as soon as he steps out of the way, the Democrats are going to pick this up. Probably not going to be 2026. So really interesting race in Wisconsin, and this is yet another toss-up. So Tony Evers, he could have run for a 3rd term. He decided not to. He decided not to make the mistake that Scott Walker did and walked away. So Mandela Barnes, he's the former lieutenant governor. He's running. The current lieutenant governor, Sarah Rodriguez, Democrat, is running. On the Republican side, you have Tom Tiffany. He's a congressman. There are others in the race as well. Probably going to be Tiffany on the Republican side, but what do I know? So, the Democratic primary looks very interesting here. Wisconsin definitely can elect Republican governors. They have elected Republican governors. They have elected Republicans to statewide office. And obviously, Donald Trump did carry it in 2024. So the Republicans can win here. It's just a question of whether or not they will win here. I'm not willing to say that they will yet. I'm not willing to say anything one way or another at this point. I think we need to get through the primaries to see which way this race is going to go. But to start this race, I think toss-up is the best place for it. And finally, we wrap up with an easy one. This is Wyoming. Mark Gordon, the incumbent Republican. He cannot run for re-election. It's safe Republican. The Republicans can nominate literally anybody they wanted, and that person would win because Wyoming does not elect Democrats anymore. So that's it. Those are the governor's races. Those are our initial rankings. They are subject to change. We probably will change them between now and November, but which way will we go? You'll just have to find out at Election Yard. Like and subscribe. Follow us on social media. We'll see you soon.